All right, everybody, here is our video lecture on understanding literature reviews. So this one, this is a interesting topic because at this point in your education, you have all done some sort of research project for different class in high school. So you've learned how to do research on a specific topic. And essentially, a literature review is in that same vein, but it has some really specific nuances that you have to navigate in order to make it an actual literature review versus just a research paper. Got this funky hair going on. Okay. So this lecture is going to kind of do a little bit of a refresher of identifying the literature we want to use for the literature reviews. And then there'll be a part 2, which is kind of how do we begin writing and structuring our literature review. So we're just going to introduce the topic of evaluating sources. We've done a little bit of this in different classes by visiting the library. But it's a good refresher because in order to write a good literature review, you have to have good sources to evaluate. So we've started locating our sources. We've done some work trying to find some in the library. Hopefully you've done some more to implement it outside of just the assignment we've had to do. But when you're looking for sources to include, so maybe you've found a lot and you're not sure are these good or bad, regardless of the spot you're at, we are assuming that you have some sources. So if we are evaluating sources for inclusion or exclusion, don't want to use them, you want to ask yourself questions about these sources. So the first one to ask, is the information outdated? So our gold standard is nothing more than 10 years old. So we're in 2026. So nothing before 2016 should be used. We had a discussion too, talking about how data might be impacted by COVID-19. So like anything prior to 2020 is still considered valid, but we do want to read it through the lens of, has the world changed in such a way that that information might not be the most accurate source to utilize? Again, can use them, but use that critical thinking around the validity and the applicability of the content. Another thing to consider is what sources are used by the author. Are these sources that are used and referencing quite in the past? I've done this before with research. I was researching the topic of trauma in college students, and a lot of articles I was reading was citing stuff. It was written after 2020, but it was citing a lot of information pre-COVID. And so even though my source I was reviewing was post-COVID, some of the data was pre-COVID, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing. We just have to use that critical eye when we're reading. So if your author is published recently but using a lot of outdated sources, we have to consider, is this the best source? It's good to look at who published the source. So looking at, is it from a journal? Is it from a website? Is it from someone that has some sort of credibility in the academic world? It's good just to look at that. Obviously want to know if the source is relevant to your topic. I've had it before where I found a great source and I really liked the article, but it really didn't have much to do with my topic. So I kind of had to let it go and be like, okay, maybe I don't need to use this and I can just save it for a different project. But you want to make sure that sources are relevant to your topic. That kind of seems like a no-brainer. Is it important, and how important is the source in other literature? So this is a really good thing we can use on Google Scholar. So if you have an article that you have located, it will show you how many other sources have cited that article in their own works. So if it's something that's been utilized a lot in other research, that means it's a good, legit source and something that's really good to use. So that's a good little tool to use to see. It also can help if you click on them. I think if you click on it, it can take you to other sources that cite it. So you might be able to find more literature related to your topic. And then, does the author have credentials to write on the topic? This is a really good one too. If you are researching something around, let's say, substance use, you want to look to see, does this person have credentials in that field, or are they a business major. I don't know. You can still write about substance use if you're in the business field, but look at the credentials to see if this is somebody who has the backing to speak on what they are writing about. Sorry, I was blanking. Sorry, other questions to ask when you're evaluating your sources. Is the source accurate? So are they, this is where you can kind of like look to see like what other sources they're citing. Are they using other research to back what they're saying? Or are they going rogue and just spewing their opinion? That kind of ties into the source reliable and objective. Objective research is really good. Obviously, we all come in with our biases. We might be writing from a certain angle because we want to validate and justify our position. But the more objective the article is, the better, just in the sense is that you're getting unbiased and good credible source. What is the scope of the article? So this is kind of looking at the population that the author is writing about. And so we've talked a little bit about, if we're researching college students, is the article we're reading about college students in a different country. Again, good information, but is it going to be relatable to college students in America? Did they have a really small sample size? So is this something that was very specific to a small group of people, a specific ethnic group, a specific gender? Is it something that is all encompassing, or is it pretty narrow in scope? Again, not necessarily bad to have information that's narrow in scope, but we have to use, again, critical thinking to be able to flesh out how generalizable the information can be. And then how strong is the evidence in the article? That's, again, looking at the sources that they've used. Do they have enough backing from outside sources to validate what they are saying, and those types of things. So it's always good to remember that your research question is going to guide you in what studies you're going to look at. So we don't have a finely crafted research question yet. I know you guys have your general topic, but you want to make sure the literature you're reviewing is going to guide you to that specific research question. All right, so in chapter 1 of the guidebook, it did talk a little bit about different types of articles. So there is theoretical, practical, and empirical. All good information and good resources to use, but the best ones to use are empirical articles. So we're going to kind of flesh that out just as a reminder. So theoretical articles, these discuss a theory, a concept, or model, or framework. Oh, my computer is being stupid right now. Okay, sorry. It was like popping up things. I don't know what it was doing. Okay, so theoretical articles, those are discussing the theory, concept, framework, or understanding of our problem. And this just helps you understand how to think about a topic, and this may help you make sense of the results of an empirical study. So it's kind of just orienting you to a certain idea, kind of getting information. Practical articles are similar because they're describing how things are done. These are shorter than other types of articles, and they intend to inform practitioners of a discipline on a current issue. So this is like if you want to learn more about, let's say, trauma-informed care. You might find a practical article walking through what are the principles of trauma-informed care, what are strategies to implement trauma-informed care. This is just gathering information to learn more about something. And then our empirical articles, these report the results of a quantitative or qualitative data analysis conducted by the author. Now what you will find with empirical articles is that they all have a similar format and structure. And so you can easily start to identify what are empirical versus the theoretical or practical. So this next little chart might help a little bit. Kind of understand the difference between the three. If you're looking at a theoretical article, no new data was collected. This is just explaining or kind of describing or modeling something to you. So this is not new research that's done. This is just kind of an academic conversation. Typically, the audience for a theoretical article is a researcher or theorist. It's kind of helping you build more understanding on a topic to be able to do empirical research and write an article. Again, really good information, but there's not necessarily new data collected by the author. The practical ones, sometimes there is data collected by the author. other times not. So they may have done some sort of study that they incorporate into it, but the purpose isn't to explain the study they did, it's to explain the topic and apply the knowledge. So these are really helpful for practitioners or professionals wanting to learn more information around a certain topic. Now, the empirical studies, which is what we, in a sense, are kind of writing because we're going to be doing a research study. Empirical ones show data collected by, the author. So they have implemented some sort of research study to be able to bring new academic information to the conversation. So usually the main goal of an empirical article is to test or discover new information. And this is really geared towards researchers or academics. So what you will find, what you'll kind of see when you identify empirical articles is that they often start with an introduction. So this will contain the literature review. And it's actually a really good place to kind of look when you're starting to craft your literature review, because it's going to show already pulling themes that they have discovered, and you can kind of build off of that. It'll show the methods of how they gathered their samples, the population. That's a big one, kind of their sample size, how they measure their variables. So they like put name to variables, they show the design study, and then how they took that data and analyzed it. So after the methods section, you'll see the results section. So this provides a discussion pretty in-depth of what they find. There's a lot of statistics often thrown in there. So that's why we have you all take a statistics class, because it helps you be able to read empirical articles better, understand what the heck they're actually saying. And then there'll be a discussion at the end as well. So reviews the main findings and addresses how those findings fit into the existing literature. They might pose additional questions that they have from their findings. It might have validated the research question. It might have negated it. But it kind of brings it all together in kind of like a summary, but just kind of like what are the next steps and how does this tie into the bigger picture? So when you encounter empirical articles, or even the theoretical or practical, because those are good too. But when you're reviewing articles for a lit review, this is a really handy way to kind of save yourself some time from reviewing, reading a ton of articles. So a good place to start is just kind of a preview. So you take your article, you print it off, you pull it up on your screen, whatever you do. You just kind of eyeball it. So you do the broad sweep of the literature, looking at the title, the date of the publication, author, publisher, table of contents. So that kind of checks off some of those things that we looked at on previous slides. So is this within past 10 years? Is it from a credible source? Does the author have those credentials that we're looking for? If yes, then you want to move on to the overview. If no, maybe you want to just table it and be like, we'll come back to it if I can't find any other good articles. So if you decide that you want to pursue the article you're looking at, you do kind of an overview of it. So again, kind of scanning through there, looking at the headings, the subheadings, the introductions, conclusions, graphs, tables, summaries, those kind of things. And it seems like, oh yeah, this is actually on topic. We're going to then go into that in view, the detailed, careful reading of the subject matter. So taking the notes on everything you read. So identifying the themes, what stands out. Are some of your topics and variables that you are wanting to study, are they present in the article? So you can kind of pull from that. So save yourself some time from reading every article in depth. Do the preview, overview, in view if it's something that you find to be helpful. This is taken straight from the textbook. Some questions to ask while reading the research reports. So an empirical article, starting with the abstract. I'm not going to go through all of these because it's in your textbook, but this is a really handy tool to kind of have on hand when you are starting to dive deeper into articles that you actually like. So use this resource. You can use it from the slides. You can use it from the textbook, however you want to use it. All right, that is the end of this one. The next video will focus on the structure of a literature review and kind of how to write it.